This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz. Very excited to be speaking with Tim Fehlbaum about September 5. How are you, Tim?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. What did you know about this history before you started on this film?
Oh, quite a lot actually. Two things. I first learned about that historical day in when seeing a documentary called One Day in September. Yeah, you're nodding. You know it too. So it's a really interesting and very important documentary, and it had a huge impact on me. And then I studied in Munich, and in Munich it is. I went to film school there, and in Munich, this tragedy, even after all these years, still feels quite present. Um, so I even before I started working on or thinking about making a movie about this, I was quite knew quite a lot about it.
Quite different, also, even just genre-wise from your previous films. Did it feel like a real departure from those?
Yeah, it did in a way. In sci-fi also you do also do science. You do also do your research, right? You try to find out as much as possible on the subject that you're planning to write a script on. But if approaching something that is a real life tragedy, I felt a bigger responsibility and even had to do even more research before we try to find out as much as possible before even starting the first to write the first word. So that was our approach. And this is also then in the process of that we found out what an important role, what I didn't know before, but an important role the media played on that day. And I was immediately interested in that aspect as someone who is working in the media myself. This is something that I could relate to, or that I also felt like, oh, this is an aspect of that day that I could tell a story about.
It's an interesting film too because we don't actually see a lot of the events that are taking place, but we see them through other people watching them on a screen. How did you go about constructing everything so you had those multiple layers?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what also I, from the very beginning on, I found such an interesting challenge. Like, how do I tell a story entirely from that location with the windows, as you just mentioned, as the only, with the monitors as the only windows to the outside world? And it's also in a way ironic, right, that they were so close to the real tragedy, but in our film, as it was in real life, they never leave the studio. Like, if you ever been to a TV studio, this is also like really kind of a parallel world. It's like a dark, narrow world with these monitors, as I said, as the only windows. And to me, yeah, I think that's the strength also of the movie. And this is also a lot about what you don't see more than about what you actually see.
There's also that particularly devastating moment where, if you know the history, seeing everyone celebrate because they think everyone has been rescued and that everybody is free, and just knowing that. And I think that what the film does, which is interesting, is it doesn't give you any forewarning that there's still something bad that's about to happen. And unless you know what's going on, you might think that it was a happy ending.
Yeah, I mean, there was also no forewarning for this crew, so we decided to very strictly tell everything from their perspective, so the audience would never know more than what these people in that room know, or would never see more than what they could have seen. And that's what you just mentioned. I mean, that was, yeah, it was an official announcement. And as we show it in the movie, there was already a German official coming to the studio, basically announcing that there would be all free.
I also was particularly struck by Leonie Benish's character. I think that, the idea that she has this attachment to Germany's role in, what's happening to Jews and to Israelis was very poignant.
Yeah, for us, she represents that character. I mean, as we just discussed before, we never leave the studio. But for the story, it is very the historical context of in what time this Olympics took place in Germany is, of course, very important. It was not so long after World War II. It was the first Olympics on German soil since the ones that were of 36 that were misused for fascist propaganda. And now Germany wanted to present itself in a whole new light. They called it the Serene Games. They wanted to have an almost hippie-esque vibe in the Olympic Village. That's also why they didn't have any armed police. And in a way, the character of Leonie Benesch represents that new generation.
And of course, Jim McKay's, role is very important in this one. And it reminded me a lot of Joseph McCarthy in Good Night and Good Luck, that it's someone who, is not part of the ensemble, but still feels like that. Was there any consideration that you might have someone play him, or did you always know you wanted to do it this way?
I always wanted to have Jim McKay. For me, it was very early on clear that we absolutely have to include the original footage. I even at some point said, if we don't get McKay, don't want to do the movie at all. But it was really tricky to get it. It was not easy. The copyright situation around this footage was complicated, and it was only because producers had the same vision that we actually have to absolutely include it that we could get it. And actually, we could only achieve it because we were lucky enough that we had Jeffrey Mason, that's the character that John McGarrell plays, the real Jeffrey Mason, supporting our project and being a big partner on it. And he helped us when approaching the footage, the copyright situation. And there was one lucky incident. Like I went to a lot of control rooms, of sports broadcasts, just to study this world. And I was once in a control room in New York, and I saw at CBS Sports, and back then CBS Sports was run by Sean McManus, and Sean McManus is the son of Jim McKay. So I saw him, and I ran in. I walked up to him and I said, like, "Hey, I'm a filmmaker from Europe. I have a project. Your father plays an important role. Please, can we talk?" And he was kind enough to talk to me. By the way, was there also as a teenager in Munich when this tragedy, when his father was reporting into the cameras, and he yeah, it was. I think it helped us a lot that he gave us his blessing when we were approached the footage.
Were there any technical challenges to filming, in this control room and how you were able to set it up like that?
Yeah, I mean there were a lot of technical challenges because we had the ambition that we wanted to make as much as possible of that technology, not only be the correct accurate technology that they used back then, but we also wanted to as much of it as possible to work so that the cast could actually interact with it. I planned to shoot it in a documentary style where everything that's coming from the outside via these devices to the cast should actually really happen. And so these machines needed also to work, and that was really tough. Also the monitors, and so we didn't want the cast to look at green screens. In a film that is mostly about people looking at monitors, it would have been, yeah, also for their reaction, and also that we would have to replace everything with CGI, and we didn't want that. We just wanted the real deal to happen in the camera, and for this we had to make these monitor wall work again, and that was a very, very complicated undertaking.
Do you feel like people should go back and watch the documentary after seeing this film, or that this mostly
Oh,
covers a lot of the same ground?
no, I mean, no, I absolutely would recommend that because we only cover a certain aspect and from a certain perspective of that day. There's so much more to learn about that is also still for today, unfortunately, still relevant. And it's so I would absolutely recommend that.
I think, yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the film is still very relevant today. And I think that there are some who are approaching this film with suspicion because they feel like it only portrays one side of the story or something like that. How do you feel about comments like that? And how did that play any role in when you were planning to make the film?
Yeah, we're living in a world where, of course, for reasons that I understand, a lot of people have strong feelings about this conflict. And um, of course, the world we live in now has an influence on how people will see this film. We finished this movie way before we were finished shooting and editing before this conflict so tragically escalated again. Our film, though, is about that very specific moment in time, and is a film about that turning point in media history. And hopefully, we will make audiences of today. We provide a way to yeah, to reflect on our own complex media environment through that historical lens.
And I do appreciate the straightforward nature of some of the conversations, like, can we call this person a terrorist? Is that a loaded term, or is that exactly legally what they're doing in this case? That was a very interesting scene I found.
Yeah, that's from our research what the discussions that they had on that day. And again, it comes back to the fact that these were sports broadcasters, right? So they were not prepared or experienced in reporting on a crisis like this. A few hours before, they were still covering a swim race, and now suddenly they were confronted with these questions. And of course, wording is always then something that you would discuss.
If some response has been like at festivals and other places you've shown the film.
Yeah, I mean, we had yeah, very good responses so far. I'm pretty overwhelmed with everything that's happening to the movie, and I'm glad that I have this positive reactions from the audience.
Do you feel like it's been different based on where you've shown it? Like, for instance, in Germany, certain crowds might react a different way.
That's a good question. Yeah, of course, in Germany, what comes on top in a way is that it took place there, and it was, yeah, I think for Germany, it's not a good chapter in a way. It was a very it yeah, it was for several reasons. Um it didn't went well how German authorities reacted on this. Although you always have to consider how unprecedented that situation was. They also didn't have a special unit, police unit, who was trained to deal with a situation like this. But yeah, I notice a difference maybe if I show it in Germany. Yeah.
What do you intend to do next? More historical drama, back to sci-fi, or something else
I
entirely?
don't really know. I have to say, I enjoy is maybe the wrong word in that tragic context, but yeah, it was a very interesting experience to learn something based on a true historical story. I could very well see myself doing again something like this, or in a complete different direction. I don't know yet.
Well, this is a word fuzz, so I'm always curious about people I'm talking to. What are you watching? What have you seen recently that's been very powerful for you or entertaining?
Well, I would go with a movie of my German colleague director, Ed Berger, Conclave. I really love that movie. Very wonderful.
Thank you so much, Tim. Such a pleasure
Thank
speaking with
you.
you today, and good luck with whatever comes
Thank you.
next.
Thank you.